Warning, the following material is extremely disturbing. On Grave Matter, we try to be as accurate as possible and we collect information from many different sources. We don't condone or glorify murder, and we try to be as sensitive as possible to victims and their families while approaching a serious subject matter with a sense of humor. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 12.
Good to have you. Good to have you. Thank you for joining us again.
Hope everyone's doing great.
Hope everybody had a great 4th of July and saw some fireworks.
Hope you all still have your fingers and various other body
Let
parts.
us know if you don't. That would be really interesting. And I would certainly be interested to hear if anything got blown off.
Terry, reverse Terry. What are you doing, Terry? Poor Terry. You'll never live that down.
Poor Terry.
So, episode 12, you guys. Next week will be Baker's Dozen.
Yes.
This week is just a regular dozen.
Just a regular dozen. We have two great people. Well, I don't know how to word that.
There's not certainly, like that.
Let's not. We have two interesting killers lined up for you.
Yeah.
This week as usual.
This is one I've done that I actually think his story would make a pretty decent movie. It actually kind of reminds me of the movie Frequency a little bit.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
That is interesting. I want to see how that correlates. My guy's name is Billy Frank Vickers. He went by Sonny, a.k.a. the Lone Star Hitman. And Jill, who are you talking about?
His name is Faryion Wardrip. Yep, not making that one
You're
up.
making it up.
Nope.
That's not real.
I tried looking up what the name Faryion means, or Faryion.
Mm-hmm.
It's Faryion. Got nothing.
It doesn't mean anything.
They're like, less than 5 people per year are named this, and I'm like, probably a lot less than 5.
Yeah, no kidding. Once ever.
Yeah, I want to search Facebook and see if there's any Faryions on there.
We got our guy. That's him. You know what I mean?
Well, he's still alive. So.
Damn.
That's
in prison.
Yeah, usually most of our guys are dead.
I'm noticing a trend with our killers. They're either usually dead or in prison.
Or alive.
Guess that's the trifecta of options. I mean, not sure what else what other category they would fall under.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so who wants to go first? You want to go first? I think I went first last week.
It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, go for it. I want to hear about Tinkle Fairy Wardrip or whatever.
It sounds like a child's cartoon mixed with a NASCAR driver.
Yeah, exactly. Tinkle Fairy Wardrip. Like they had like a weird kid that was like an outcast, the black sheep of the Wardrip family. I don't know.
Well, his name is Wardrip.
Wardrip.
There's no L, it's R instead.
Wardrip.
Yeah.
That's a weird name.
Yep. So Faryion Wardrip, he was born March 6th, 1959 in Salem, Indiana.
Of course he was.
Yeah. I guess. So his parents were George and Diana Wardrip, and he was the oldest child. He had one younger brother. So, in 1978, he was 19 years old. He joined the National Guard. He was in for 6 years, but he was released under less than honorable discharge. Basically, he got discharged due to smoking marijuana, multiple absences, AWOL.
Oh, man.
Yeah. During his service, he was not in active duty. Like, he was not in active combat, I guess is what I meant to say.
Yeah. Do you know what his job was? Like, what he did? His military occupational specialty?
Nope. I can look it up real quick.
Nah, I was just wondering.
Okay. So, in March of 83, he was 24 years old. He got married. He married Joanna Jackson, and they had 2 children together. He was addicted to drugs and alcohol throughout his adult life, but he managed to obtain work as like a janitor, I guess, for the Wichita Falls General Hospital in Texas. And within 12 months of that, he was promoted to be an orderly.
What is an orderly? What type of?
I think it's like a soft nurse, like a gopher. You know what I mean? Like a
soft nurse, like an errand runner.
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm basing my opinion of orderlies off of The Frighteners, the movie The Frighteners.
That's what I like. What if I see orderly? It's in like a movie. You know what I mean? I don't know. Is that like an old thing? It's
so
like a World War II thing or something.
So the guy that was an orderly in The Frighteners, of his job that I saw, he pushed around a cart with stuff on it.
Gotcha.
Super important. I'm sure they probably like brought supplies to rooms and maybe medications. I'm not sure exactly. Sorry to all orderlies out there. I don't even think they call it that anymore.
I don't know.
They probably call it like nurse's aide or something. So he was promoted to orderly from janitor, but due to all of his addictions and whatever, he was unable to maintain his employment, I guess. So he bounced around in a lot of jobs, which in turn, his wife's family wound up like helping them financially quite a bit. They would pay the rent, make sure they had food in the house, all that. So his wife eventually got tired of his lack of responsibility. She didn't like having her parents help, and she took their kids and divorced him in October of 86.
Damn.
Yeah.
Hey, that's when you were born.
That's when I was born. I couldn't find what day. I guess it wasn't important enough to put. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get right into his crimes. So his first victim was Terry Lee Sims. She was a...
Back it up, Terry. Sorry. I'm sorry.
She was an EKG specialist. Yeah, at the hospital. And that's kind of where the movie... Why it reminds me of the movie is because some of these girls were hospital employees. Remember the guy from Frequency was...
I picture the nurses in like the little hats and everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably what it was like. I think I actually saw some of their pictures in it. They look just like
Straight
that.
up.
Yeah. So he attacked her on December 21st of 84.
God damn it.
Right before Christmas. On that day, she had left work at 11 o'clock in the evening, and she left with her coworker, Lisa Boone.
Lisa Boone?
Lisa Boone. So they both went to a mutual friend's house to exchange Christmas gifts.
Christmas.
Shut up. They went to exchange Christmas gifts.
Merry Christmas.
And Lisa was called back to work that night unexpectedly. They wanted her to work the midnight shift.
Whack.
Yeah. So what she did basically was she gave Terry the key to her apartment, and she dropped her off in front of her apartment and said, you can stay here tonight. I'll be back in the morning, blah, blah, blah.
Got it.
So the next morning, Boone comes back to her apartment. Lisa Boone comes back to her apartment, and she can't get in. And she's like knocking, and because Terry has her key.
Right.
And so when she can't get in and she can't get anybody to answer, she goes to her landlord's house, which I guess is nearby, and asks to borrow the key. And he gives her the key. And when she goes home, she opens the door, and she sees like the whole living room is like ransacked. Everything's knocked over. It looks like a struggle took place.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So she immediately turns around and goes back to her landlord's house and says, my house is torn up. I don't know where my friend is. Can you help me find her? I don't want to go in there by myself.
Yeah.
So the landlord...
Oh, so she ran as soon as she saw the living room.
Yeah.
Didn't even look through the house.
Right. So she goes and gets the landlord, and he comes back with her, and he goes in to look around, and he finds Terry's body in the bathroom. She had been raped. She was laying in a pool of blood, and he had stabbed her to death.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So Merry Christmas.
Yeah, what's up with that? That's like a reoccurring trend,
Yeah, I don't know.
Even on our first episode, the poor audio quality that it was, even his time frame was like Christmas, Mm-hmm. It's weird.
Yep.
Angel Resendez did it right before Christmas. Mm-hmm. Even went through their presents and stuff. Like, you got to be a dick.
Right?
You know what I mean?
What are you not going to get this year?
I know. Jeez.
So, basically what happened, what the police put together was that while Lisa was at work, Terry was inside the apartment, and she heard like a bunch of commotion outside and a bunch of noise. And so she went outside to investigate what the noise was, and she went to run back in the apartment, and she locked him out, and he kicked the door in. So I don't know how he locked it when he left, because she couldn't get back in, remember?
Mm-hmm.
But she only weighed like 94 pounds. She was a super tiny girl.
Oh, man.
And he was not. He was like 6'5", 220 pounds.
Oh, shit.
But she was resisting enough to where he tied her arms and whatever with like electrical cord. And the coroner reported that after he had stabbed her, after the attack took place and he left, she lived for another several minutes. But he did leave plenty of evidence behind. He left fingerprints. He left semen, which at the end, they finally linked it to him.
Mm-hmm.
His next victim...
And no one else... Was that... Hold on, real quick. That nobody else heard that or anything, huh? Or at least
No, I guess not.
not enough to see it or anything.
Nobody called anything in. So his next victim was Tony Jean Gibbs. He killed her on January 19th of 1985.
Gotcha.
I think that was like a month later after the first murder. She actually worked as a nurse, and she knew Wardrip because they worked at the same hospital.
Wardrip.
Yeah. She encountered him around 6 a.m. and she was leaving to go home from work, and she offered him a ride because she knew who he was.
Oh, man. At work. This is where it... Okay.
Yeah. So...
Risky.
Yeah, as soon as they got in the vehicle, he immediately started attacking her.
Oh, shit. Like in the parking lot at work?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And he works there, too?
Yeah. He wasn't real careful, I guess.
He didn't seem like he was very careful at all.
No.
Leaving bloody things everywhere, attacking people at work.
Exactly.
Not exactly a Dexter, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
He forced her to drive to an isolated location. He sexually assaulted her, stabbed her 8 times in the face, neck, and back. He actually left her inside of an abandoned school bus that he found out there.
Like into the wild.
Yeah. And he left her. She was still alive when he left, but he knew she was not long. You know what I mean? She managed to crawl more than 100 feet from the bus before succumbing to her injuries. Her body wasn't even discovered until like a month later. There was another guy named...
Oh, wow. A month later?
Yeah.
Jeez.
There's another guy named Danny Laughlin that was actually almost charged with her murder. He had opportunity, and he knew the victim. He spent a lot of time in the area where she was murdered and found. He failed a polygraph test, but only one of the jurors during his trial believed that he was guilty. The rest of them were like, no way. So he walked. Luckily for him.
Wow, yeah, no kidding.
So both of the first victims actually had a lot in common. They both worked in hospitals. They both weighed exactly 94 pounds.
Interesting.
They were under 5'5", I think. And like I said, Wardrip was actually 6'6", and he weighed 220 pounds.
Jesus. He's a massive dude.
He didn't really have to fight them too hard. They put up a hell of a fight, but it was pretty easy for him, I think.
I can't imagine getting stabbed in the face.
No, that's pretty awful. I've seen a lot of stories where people actually were stabbed in the face with like screwdrivers and stuff. Like, can you imagine
No.
a blunt instrument like that? You know?
Like, I can't imagine how bad that would feel.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's worse, I think, than getting stabbed with
And
something
like
sharp,
these
obviously.
people survive being stabbed in the face and then crawling 100 feet from the bus, like, and she's been stabbed in the face and the head like 8 times. It's like in her brain. Think about that. When the knife enters your brain, she probably no longer has her entire capability of thought. You know what I mean? Who knows what he damaged when he stabbed her in the brain? Is she like, why am I here right now? Like, maybe she doesn't remember what just happened. All she knows is she's dying. Like, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, pretty awful.
Yes.
Didn't stop him, though.
Moving right along. Jeez.
So his third victim was Deborah Taylor. This one's kind of interesting because it wasn't in the same area as the others.
It was not?
No. 4 out of his 5 total murders took place in Wichita Falls area.
Wichita?
This one happened in Fort Worth. Basically what happened was he actually traveled to Fort Worth to look for work. And he was in a bar one night, and he met Deborah Taylor, and she was there with her husband, but he got tired and decided he was going to leave early, and she wanted to stay. So
Never a good situation.
I mean, I guess. I don't know. So at one point, Wardrip was actually sitting across the bar from her, and he was paying attention. He saw the husband leave, and he was like, he went up to her and he said, like, do you want to dance? And she agreed. So they did. And they spent the rest of the time the bar was open dancing, chatting, hanging out. They got along fine. But once they left the bar, Wardrip asked her if he could give her a ride home, and she agreed. But he started, like, when they got to the car, he started trying to make sexual advances towards her, and she was like, no.
Red flags from the beginning, in my opinion.
Yeah, she was like, no dice, I'm married, just, if you can give me a ride home, that'd be great, no hard feelings, whatever. Well, there was plenty of hard feelings on his side. ...
To be continued.
So he basically attacked her, he killed her, and he wound up leaving her body at a construction site. Her husband reported her missing the next morning, but it wasn't until 2 days later 2 construction workers found her.
They had to have some leads, though. The husband knew exactly where she was.
Well, actually, they blamed the husband. They thought he was the one that done it.
Yeah, I guess they don't have like cameras like they do now.
Yeah. They never placed those other 2 murders with this one. They didn't fit the same profile, I guess. And they were in a different location, so they were never linked.
Kind of like a one-off incident, yeah.
Right. But they basically ruined this guy's life, the husband. Okay, so on September 20th of 85, he actually abducted a woman named Ellen Blau, I believe. It's Blau.
Huh. Blau.
Yeah. He abducted her as she was leaving her job. She wasn't a nurse, but she was actually a waitress. She was walking alone to her car when he grabbed her.
This guy's got some cojones, man.
For sure. He forced her to drive to a secluded location. He strangled her, which is odd because he stabbed the other 2.
Yeah. I did hear in doing my research for, I think it was Suff, that it was super common for serial killers to change up their methods eventually. You know what I mean?
Well, he did. He was abducting hospital staff. You know, he was kind of all over the place for a while, which may have helped him not get caught for such a long time. There's actually a Cold Case Files episode about this particular killing, and they interviewed Wardrip, and he claimed, I guess, during the show, he was like,
wait, they interviewed him?
He claimed that he had broken her neck.
Wait, he was in prison, they interviewed him?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But he claimed that during the time he was strangling her, she actually died because he broke her neck.
Oh, damn. Sounds like it might have been a prison interview.
So her underwear were down. They believed she was sexually assaulted, but her body wasn't found until October 10th. So that's like a little bit less than a month later.
Yeah.
So any like evidence, DNA evidence, anything like that was gone already. There was no semen on her. She probably got rained on. Who knows what happened, but
yeah.
she was too degraded by that point. And she actually knew him as well. They lived in the same apartment complex, and later on her friends would, discuss the case or whatever, and they were like, she was totally creeped out by him. She was uncomfortable around him. She avoided him.
One dude? Makes sense.
The 5th victim was Tina Kibrew. Okay?
All right.
Now, poor bastard Danny Laughlin from, the second murder? Was also suspected of killing Tina.
That husband dude?
No, the guy that was that knew the second victim, and like he hung around the area where she just
she
was
shit.
murdered.
Yeah.
But he failed the polygraph
Jesus Christ.
test.
He gets suspected again?
Yeah, he gets suspected again. But they obviously ruled him out pretty quickly.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. I don't know why they had it out for him to begin with.
I know, right?
But Tina Kibrew was killed on May 6th of 86. She was his last victim. She was 21 years old, and she was actually friends with Wardrip. She was a waitress as well. I mean, they were decent friends to the point where, like, he had been to her house, he knew where she lived, and he actually went to her house, entered her house in the middle of the night, and smothered her with a pillow. That was how he killed her.
I'm surprised his name hasn't come up yet, with all these people that knew him.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but...
He is varying the method, it seems like, almost every time, though.
He's pretty lucky, I would say. So he said that he killed her because she reminded him of his ex-wife.
You remind me of a girl. Yep.
That I'm not fond of. And actually, a lot of eyewitnesses saw him leaving the complex shortly before her body was discovered. They reported him to the police.
Seems pretty cut and dry to me.
But he was wearing like a cap. Nobody knew who he was.
They were just like suspicious dude.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They're like, we saw this really tall guy with dark brown hair.
He's abnormally large. He looks like Slenderman.
And he was really kind of giving off vibes, and he took off like right before we found her body. So within 72 hours of killing Tina, Wardrip actually called the police and said, like, I'm going to kill myself, and
oh man,
threatened suicide. And so
weird.
Yeah. So the police came to his home, and he actually, like, on the spot confessed to murdering Tina.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why, just her.
Making some progress. I got it. I know, that's weird, right?
Yeah, I don't know if he felt guilt because he knew her and they were friends. Like, he knew the rest of them too, pretty much, but...
Yeah, that's the thing.
He was friends with this one specifically. It said they were friends. So maybe he just felt guilt about it.
Yeah.
He was actually arrested. He was convicted and sentenced to 35 years in prison for Tina's murder. He served less than a third of his sentence and was released on parole in 97. But they required him to wear an ankle bracelet, like an ankle monitor.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me still.
He was allowed to, like, still go to work and church and things like that, but they were able to track his movements, basically.
Okay.
He was an active member of society. He remarried. Yeah, things seem to be looking up. Well,
Jeez.
so this is where the shit hits the fan for old Faryion here. So in 1999, a Wichita Falls detective named John Little began a cold case investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And he was looking through unsolved murders, and he came across the murders of Terry Sims and Tony Gibbs and Ellen Blau.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He noticed that there was DNA recovered from the scenes where their bodies were found, and they were later matched to each other, indicating they were killed by the same person.
Mm-hmm.
But they never matched them to an actual person.
Right.
With good old gumshoe detective, freaking awesome police work, Little actually uncovered links between Wardrip and Blau, and then
Just finding out what I was talking about. Yeah. His name came up.
Right. He was like, okay, so he knew her.
Mm-hmm.
He knew her. He lived near her. So he actually, on his own, suspected this guy. But they didn't have any DNA from him.
Mm-hmm.
So this badass cop, I'm so proud of him. It's awesome. He tracked down Wardrip, right?
Okay.
And he was like, this is where he works. I'm going to go pay him a visit. So he shows up at Wardrip's work, and he's like, hey, man, just, checking in on your parole. You're on parole. I'm just checking in with you, making sure everything's tight, And they were standing there chatting, and he was playing friendly with him, and Wardrip was drinking, a cup of coffee, a styrofoam cup. And he was, looking for a trash can to put it in. And he was the detective was like, hey, I actually got I got a chew in or a dip or whatever. He's chewing tobacco. He's like, let me use your cup to spit in. That'll help me out a lot.
Yeah.
So as they're standing there talking.
Damn, that's some old school detective shit.
Wardrip just hands him his cup, and he leaves the building with the cup and gets his DNA tested off of it, and it matches.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So Detective Little had Wardrip arrested, and he was actually sentenced to death for the murder of Sims and life for the other 3 killings. So he was on the hook for all 5 now. He'd already served time for the first one, but that's one hell of a parole violation.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Actually, Wardrip commented during trial or an interview or whatever. He said, I would have been caught a long time ago, and these connections would have been made if somebody paid a little more attention.
Or if he would have said something, but whatever.
Yeah, well, he's saying, why didn't anybody connect me to these girls before now? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
he's right. It sounds like,
Yeah. So on June 14th of 2011, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reversed a lower court ruling that ordered the state of Texas to either give Wardrip a new sentencing trial or agree to give him a life sentence. They wanted to take away the death penalty for him for some reason.
Okay.
So the case is actually active right now. It will be sent back to the U.S. District Court for reconsideration.
That's why he's still alive.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But he was sentenced to death initially.
Yeah, he was. But right now, for whatever, the Circuit Court of Appeals is fighting to get him life instead of death.
Okay.
So right now he's on death row at the Polinsky unit near Livingston.
Alan B. Polinsky unit.
Yep. And I guess they're trying to decide what to do with him. So I don't know. He's still out there though.
I'm sure that'll take a long time just to figure out.
I just think that would make a cool movie. If they could put some kind of paranormal twist on it or something, I think it'd be cool.
That does sound like a cool movie plot. A lot of these stories would probably be cool movie plots. I sit here looking up at our photo wall of killers that we've covered, and I think a lot of these stories would make really, really great movies.
Yeah, I think so. I think that one was really interesting
Angel
for me
Resendez.
To research. Total nightmare of a human being, but
yeah, and it sounds like he almost got away with the early sentence as well.
Yeah, it seems. I really wonder if he ever regretted turning himself in for the other one.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because if he hadn't turned himself in for that one, and he wasn't on parole and all that stuff, they may have made the connections, but they wouldn't have been able to just approach him and be like, "Hey, we need your DNA or get it, unlawfully."
That guy might have. I don't know.
I mean, he would have had no reason to visit him if he wasn't on parole. You know what I mean?
He's like Sergeant Dokes. Surprise, motherfucker.
Yeah. And it didn't even seem to me, based on the interviews and the stuff that I looked at, that Wardrip was really all that pissed off that he was caught at the end. He was just like, well, you would have caught me faster if you'd been paying attention. You know what I mean?
It seems like a lot of these guys are relieved when they get caught,
Kind of, but he also went a long time from his last murder to when he got arrested, I think. He killed Tina Kimbrough in 1986. And he was arrested And the cold case was opened against him in 99.
Oh, okay. So that's a good amount of time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, what, 13 years? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he went 13 years after his last killing, and he was still on parole, I guess. He didn't have the monitor anymore, but they probably didn't check on him as much anymore. He'd been 13 years. He was already remarried. I guess that gave Detective Little kind of like a little... like,
funny.
He was just kind of like, I just came by to check out, see how everything is. It's been a couple years, or, just this is a program we do, or...
Right.
But either way, Faryion done fucked up, and he's locked up, and I'm okay with it.
Faryion. I bet he gets made fun of all the time.
I bet he does. Maybe.
All right, so that's Faryion, and that leads me to my guy, who goes by the name of Billy Frank Vickers, a.k.a. the Lone Star Hitman, although he did go by Sonny. So, as I wind up saying every week, this is not a normal case. He was not a convicted serial killer, but he did admit to being one later. He actually went down for just one crime. So at first I thought it was just going to be super clear cut, like a regular crime, regular criminal. And I was like, why would Jill want me to cover this dude? You know what I mean? And then I figured it out.
Yeah, you were kind of like, mine's not going to take long. This is kind of just like cut and dry, real stupid and slow, like just a quick little story,
Little tidbit snippet.
And then you were like, never mind.
So, and it's true. Yeah, he did seem like a completely regular criminal until the research got a little bit more in depth. This guy had some skeletons in his closet that really weren't fully revealed until after his death, or right before his death, which might as well we'll call it the same day. His son Keith wound up doing a bunch of research into this, and he was actually a defense attorney out in California.
Really?
So, I mean, he had definitely an intelligent approach to it and found out a ton of information. Sonny was born July 30th, 1945, after a very successful World War II. And he lived the majority of his life northeast of Dallas, Texas, in the Paris area. I couldn't really find out a ton about like where he grew up at, but I think it was in that area. He was definitely there as a preteen. So, Not too sure about his parents, but I do know that he had one younger brother similar to yours.
Yeah.
And that he was a very, very bad person. He was a
very bad man.
He was a very bad man. He was a bad influence on his younger brother for sure.
I can see that.
Yeah. By the age of 11 or 12 or so, he was already getting in trouble, and he was breaking into his neighbors' houses, I would say, and cars, but I'm not sure. They were a little bit different back then, and not as many people had them, but he was definitely conducting small robberies in his neighborhood, which led him to his first encounter with police. He was arrested at 14 years old for petty theft. Same shit.
Well, he got away with it for 3 years. That's not bad for his age, I guess.
That's true, right? So,
I mean, if he'd have broken into my house once, it'd have been over for him.
Yeah, and this was, this is back in Texas back in the day. I'm sure it wouldn't have worked out well for him. This time he got caught. He actually was placed into an adult jail in Greenville, Texas, which is closer to Dallas than Paris a little bit. Reportedly, he was raped there by an older drunken man.
What?
Yeah.
That's like a really just vague description.
It is a vague description, but
who raped you? It was an older guy.
It was an older drunken man. He was like kind of like all right, imagine a pirate.
I mean, I would have been memorizing the number on his shirt, I think.
Oh, I don't know, but it comes into play later on in the story.
Okay.
That specific dude. So he was reportedly raped by an older inmate. And then it doesn't say how long he was in jail, but it was somewhere between the period of a few days and a few months, right? He did spend a little bit of time there. He gets out of jail, and although he is traumatized from the experience, he doesn't change anything. He continues the same lifestyle. He's having run-ins with local law enforcement, and he's adding to his reputation, right? His bad reputation. At this point, somewhere around 14, 15 years old, he's basically training his little brother to do these robberies with him. And so they are. His little brother's name is Jimmy. So Sonny and Jimmy, they're doing these robberies together. And eventually has a run-in with a very strange individual, a corrupt sheriff's deputy by the name of David Ewald, who I've heard different things about. That this dude was absolutely corrupt and that he was an absolute saint. I don't know. I wasn't there. So the story is he runs into David Ewalt. He's roughly 17 at this point. This is a few years after he's been in jail or whatever. And Deputy Ewalt comes up with a plan. Crooked as a politician, right? Sheriff's deputy.
My grandpa used to say, like, crooked as a dog's hind leg.
Yeah, you guys always have those cool country sayings, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But definitely, he was absolutely corrupt. And he comes up with this Harry Morgan idea to train Sonny and Jimmy on how to not get caught from the police and how to commit perfect burglaries.
What the hell?
And he asks, just share the loot with me. Just give me my share. You know what I mean?
Sounds a little less saint now.
He had ties. The deputy had ties to organized crime, apparently, allegedly. But yeah, that was the plan. So, and then he says, if someone calls it in, I'll use the police assets to protect you in whatever way that I can. You know, I'll try to be the one to respond, or we'll put a false lead in there. You know what I mean? Something. So, this goes on for a couple years, and they became very good at it, and they became very close. And then, at about 19 years old, a couple years into this relationship, they happen across a sleeping drunk guy behind a local grocery store in the alley. And it's the fucking dude that raped him in jail.
No way.
Yes.
What kind of serendipity kind of shit is this?
Yeah.
It's not good for that guy, I'm sure.
It's really not. So he's got a few minutes left on Earth, but he calls Deputy Ewalt and he's like, what do I do? Who arrives on the scene and gives him a knife and is like, I got your back. Go take care of your business.
What the hell? I bet he was nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
Oh my God. That's the type of shit we need. Perfect.
Perfect.
So he actually just went over and he immediately killed the guy. Stabbed him in the face like 8 times. You know what I mean? Had no problem. Stabbed him in the neck and eventually he bled out pretty quickly. Ewalt, the deputy, was so impressed that he decided to fill him in on the rumors. And he was like, yes, I do have ties. Matter of fact, I want to introduce you to somebody by the name of Floyd Click, who is a senior member of leadership with the Dixie Mafia.
It's kind of a cool name, Floyd Click.
It is a pretty cool name. This was around 1965, right? Let's take a quick break and let's talk about the Dixie Mafia. Okay? The Dixie Mafia started in the late 60s by Mike, it's either Gillick or Gillich Jr., and was headquartered out of Biloxi, Mississippi. They're a violent group, kind of loosely organized, but they were known for drugs, human, and arms trafficking, and then robbery, money laundering, and extortion.
Sound like some nice guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, not really, to be honest with you. They were loosely organized in a sense that it was kind of just like this collective of criminals. Membership peaked in the 70s and 80s, but...
Biloxi actually seems like a good headquarters for that. Have you ever been there?
No, I've never been there.
Yeah, I've been there. It's been a long time, but there's a lot of casinos there, and it's kind of like a...
Mafia-esque.
Well, plus there's access to the water, you know what I mean? The ocean or whatever, not far away, from what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So, it seems like a place Vegas / New Orleans, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it seems like that would be they could be pretty active there and successful, you know what I mean, in their crime.
Makes sense to me.
Lots of money there.
Well, that's definitely where the headquarters was, and it was started around this time, so they really over time developed a reputation for contract killings. Surprise, surprise. Because Floyd Click offers him a job as a contract killer.
The cop, or
offers Sonny after killing the dude.
He was like 17?
He was 19 at this time. Okay. So the cop brings him to the leader of the mafia and is like, you should hire this dude. He just did some work in this alleyway. I gave him a knife and he went and killed it. You should definitely hire this guy. So he's like, all right.
Glowing recommendation.
Mm-hmm. So he hires him.
Christopher Walken.
So he hits him in the face with a soldering iron. So he hires him as a contract killer, and Sonny's first contract was a liquor store owner in 1965 that was targeted because he was interfering with local bootlegging operations, right?
So he was his legal business conducting interfered with their...
The illegal one. Mm-hmm.
Illegal.
And got in the way, It's like Trevor Phillips Industries on Grand Theft Auto.
I bet he didn't, expect this shit when he was like getting his business license, and he's like, "Oh, I'll be killed by bootleggers later because I'm taking their business."
He had to know they were in the area.
I guess.
You don't do that. You don't open liquor stores in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Of course not.
Of course not. He was very successful in that killing. He was very professional about it, and to the point where that was kind of like the test that he passed, and they made him a full-time employee, quote unquote. He made it a career, and he performed burglaries in between his killing contracts just to kind of make money. Fast forward to 10 years later in 1976. There was a very famous trial in Texas history called the Colin Davis trial. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. It says it's famous. I've never heard of it, but apparently you haven't either, but it's okay. It was an oil magnate from Fort Worth.
I'm so ashamed.
That's fine. But this was a super rich dude. He was an oil magnate from Fort Worth, and he was going through a very expensive and a very ugly divorce with his wife, Priscilla Davis. Colin Davis, I think at the time
What's
was
his
worth...
name?
Colin Davis.
Cullen?
Cullen.
Cullen. Okay.
Colin Davis.
Yeah, I was like, that's a body part, I think.
He was worth hundreds of millions of dollars already. The word is that Davis called a buddy with ties to the Dixie Mafia. It was a friend that owned a private security company or whatever. And he offered $20,000 to take out his wife. And his buddy was like, "Oh, I know a guy. He's the best in Texas. He's like the Lone Star Hitman," right? That's kind of where the name was born. And it was Sonny. Things did not go as planned, unfortunately for this.
Botched.
So, botched is the word that was used. He gets into the house, which is a ridiculous house, by the way. It's on like 200 acres, right? It's, a big plantation style home, whatever. And he finds Priscilla's 12-year-old daughter.
Uh-oh.
Kills her, drags her to the basement, kills her. And then Priscilla comes home with her live-in boyfriend that was unknown.
Whoopsie.
And he is a 7-foot basketball player from TCU. He does shoot both of them, but Priscilla lived after being shot in the chest. Now, he was all dressed up. The shooter, right, was all dressed up. Like gloves on, a mask on, all black, long sleeves. You couldn't tell who it was, right? Priscilla was convinced that it was Cullen, her husband. And he was actually tried for the murder, but was acquitted due to a bloody palm print that did not match. Kind of sounds like OJ a little bit, close to the glove. Little interesting fact, Colin Davis is actually the richest man to ever stand trial for murder in the United States of America, with a net worth of over $400 million at the time.
Wow. Good for him.
Very cool. Very cool.
I mean,
he was acquitted, so
he did try to arrange the murder, so he was a dick anyway.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And Sonny's name actually appeared briefly as a person of interest, but was very quickly dismissed as they were like, this guy's not relevant to the case at all.
I wonder why it came up.
I don't know. I just know that it briefly popped up and they pushed it aside. Fast forward even further. So that was 1976. Now we'll go to 1989. Sonny's 44 years old. He is hired straight up by Patricia Rawson to kill her husband. He got caught.
Botched,
right? So he got caught, and I don't know if I think he did do the killing, and then he got tied up afterwards. He struck a deal for immunity for wearing a wire and coercing a confession out of the wife.
For murder?
Yeah.
Immunity for murder?
He got immunity for murder for coercing a confession out of
That's
the
impressive.
wife that hired him. But at this point, it was obvious that he was really doing these things. You know what I mean? And that was in 1989. He was 44 years old. This isn't even the main event. The main event that he got caught for is this. March of 1993. This is in Arthur City, Texas, which is just north of Paris. This is a little bit closer to the Oklahoma border. Pretty close. So Sonny and two friends start staking out a local gas station, kind of like it's a bigger than a gas station, like a little food mart, if you will. You know what I mean? The local spot. Two friends are Tommy Perkins Jr. and Jason Martin, and their whole plan was a robbery. They needed money, and they had noticed that the owner of the store always had a giant bag of cash with him on Friday nights. I guess to hold him over for the weekend. I don't know. I'm not a business owner, okay? Actually, I am. But I don't have bags of cash laying around yet.
Keep my fingers crossed for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The owner's name is Philip Kinslow. And they wind up watching this dude over a period of several different nights and even follow him to his house without him noticing. And apparently at the dude's house, there's like these 2 gates outside. And so they're like, he has to stop the car, get out, unlock the gates. And they're like, this is where we're going to bum rush him. So here's the plan. They tell Jason Martin to be the getaway driver. Say, wait down the street in your truck in a parking lot. Sonny says, me and Perkins are going to rush him. We're going to tie him up with duct tape. We're going to take his bag of money and we're going to run, right? Mm-hmm. That's the plan. They finally decide to go through with it. So the night of, here's how it went down. Kinslow's wife is inside the house and she hears gunshots outside in the front yard as her husband is pulling into the house. She's looking through the window and his truck overshoots the driveway and crashes into a tree right next to their house. And she's like, what the fuck was that, you know? There's a few members of the family in the house. They run outside to the truck and Kinslow is slumped over in the driver's seat. Obviously a gunshot wound to the chest and his own gun is laying right next to him.
So he popped off a couple shots.
There were 6.38 revolver shells on the floor, right?
Nice job, bud.
So, there was, yeah. So obviously he had a gun with him and that was unexpected as far as the robbery was concerned. That was the only thing, right? So yeah, as it turns out, he runs up to the window, points a gun at him, and the dude's just like, hell no, and immediately starts shooting back. Unfortunately, he was rushed to the hospital and died pretty soon there afterwards.
Sucks.
Yeah. So he was killed.
Fight.
So the next day, Sonny Vickers is picked up by the police walking about 2 miles from the scene on homemade crutches made out of tree branches.
Oh my God.
He's wearing shoes.
That's so like a...
Yeah, red flag, you know what I mean? Like fucking tree branch crutches. He's wearing
way to keep a low
shoe.
profile, bro.
He's wearing a shoe that matches a print, like a very obvious print that they've already looked at the scene. And he's got a gunshot wound to the knee. He's immediately arrested. They take him to the hospital, pull out a .38 caliber bullet that matches Kinslow's gun. And at this point, all 3 of them were picked up. I don't know, I guess he said the names, whatever. All 3 of them were picked up.
Okay. The crutches are killing me.
Tree branch crutches. That's that real shit. You know what I mean?
I bet those hurt your armpits like a bitch.
I wonder what that guy's night was like, though. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, damn it. I need a willow, not a freaking oak. The bark is too rough.
Seriously.
So stupid.
Like whittling fucking, like, is it a letter Y? Like, I don't know.
Here's an idea. Why don't you just stay the fuck at the house that day?
No kidding, right?
Just prop up and watch a good movie.
Well, so here's what happened. Martin agrees to testify, the getaway driver, for a plea deal. He's like, just don't give me death, and I will tell you the entire story. And he sure did. He was supposed to be the getaway driver, and he told how everything went wrong. Exactly that. He was in the truck waiting. They went up to bum rush him, and the dude started shooting. The other guy that was with him ran around the corner to the guy in the truck and was like, oh, they shot our homie. And they start driving around looking for him. Meanwhile, homie limps off into like a ditch for the night or something. And then either the next day or the following day, they're picked up themselves in relation to the crime. So, yeah, once again, totally botched. Everything went wrong, right? They were officially indicted August of 1993. They were found guilty October of 93. Martin actually got 25 years, a 25-year sentence because of his cooperation. Perkins got life with no parole, and Sonny got death. He was executed January 28th of 2004 by lethal injection in Huntsville. Very good. Pretty typical. His final words, for me, that was interesting. I don't have the entire paragraph here, but so remember, he had only gone down for this one crime, right? The story that I told you, that was all found out by his son at a later time. So as he's about to be executed, he admits to 12 to 14 killings, which led to his son's research. But he was like, yeah, I'm sorry. It was never anything personal. I was just trying to get money. He's like, there's a few things I'd like to clarify. He's like, the Colin Davis one, he was like, that wasn't Mr. Davis, and he didn't directly admit to it, but he was like, it wasn't Mr. Davis, you know what I mean? And I nothing personal, but da-da-da-da-da. And then he admitted to a few other ones as well. Wow. He was actually, right before he was executed, he was supposed to die a few days before that. So he was executed January 28th. He was supposed to die December 9th, but his death warrant actually expired, and he was one of the only guys, I think the only person to have a death warrant expire in the state of Texas.
Huh.
And it was because the Supreme Court had not yet ruled on the impending drug issue regarding cruel and unusual punishment for lethal injection. Mm-hmm. He had basically sued the federal government, saying that it's cruel and unusual punishment and it violates da-da-da-da-da. And so the Supreme Court had to, like, sign some piece of paper or something, and they didn't do it on time, so...
It's amazing that his confessions at the end didn't derail his whole death. I mean, you would expect them to be like, wait a minute, what? We want to hear more about this. You know what I mean?
They were like, fuck him. They just killed him, I guess.
If he could help them solve, a dozen cold cases.
He did. He actually, I heard from some of the investigators in the other cases, nobody believed him. Everyone was like, whatever. He's probably just saying shit. Like, so
Trying to stave off the death penalty. Damn.
Or just to go down in history, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He did have a little memoir about the horror of the night he was supposed to die and what it was like as his death warrant expired, sitting there just like the only person to walk away from that room or something. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. But really, that's it. That's the story of Billy Frank Sonny Vickers, a.k.a. the Lone Star Hitman, and how a regular criminal actually wound up living a very, very interesting life and being a hitman for the Dixie Mafia.
I wonder what his brother wound up doing.
I don't know. I didn't see any information on him after he was an adolescent, you know what I mean? So I have no idea.
Well, it was an interesting story nonetheless. Faryion Wardrip, too. He was fun.
Faryion Wardrip. Yep. And Sonny Vickers. So that's episode 12 for you. We appreciate you guys hanging in there with us. We will see you next week, of course, for episode Lucky 13.
Yeah.
Find us on social media and wherever you get your podcasts at. We are still recording premium content, and we will start releasing that eventually. Probably a couple months out still, but get it saved up in the bank a little bit.
Our next release date is on the 13th. So.
Is it really?
Yep, the 13th episode on the 13th of, July? July.
July, yeah.
I don't know what the fuck's going on.
That's all good.
This heat's got me like...
Yeah, it's hot.
Where do we live?
All right. Well, hey, we appreciate you guys very much, and we will see you next week for episode 13.
Take it easy, weirdos.